Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about how to deal with summer power outages. We're at the time of year where temperatures are starting to get really hot and they're only going to get worse. I was looking at my 10-day forecast, and by next weekend, temperatures are going to be up to 106 degrees. This is going to be an expansion of a video that I did about this time last year. We're going to cover some of the same stuff, but we're also going to talk about some new things also. One of the most important things to do during a summer power outage is to keep your body as cool as possible. And some good places to start with that are going to be your head and your neck. So for your head, something like a nice wide-brimmed hat would be useful. Now, preferably you would want something a little bit lighter than this, something like a very lightweight fishing hat with some mesh up at the top. This is pretty thick canvas, so it's not ideal. But just something to keep the sun out of your eyes, give some ventilation to your noggin, and then also keep the sweat out of your eyes. Those are always good things. Then for your neck, something like a cooling towel would be useful. And the reason why those two parts of your body are so important, first of all, your head is where your brain is. I mean, you want to keep that cool. If that gets overheated, no bueno. And then your neck, you have a lot of arteries and blood flow that runs through here. So if you're able to keep that cooler, then that blood will go to other parts of your body and hopefully help cool it down. Now, the cooling towel is only going to do so much with that, so if you or somebody else starts to get very overheated, then maybe move to something like ice packs or some frozen veggies that you don't mind being wasted, keeping you cool. And there are other parts of your body that can perform a similar function, like the inside part of your elbow, the back part of your knee, under your armpits, your groin. Those are areas where major arteries and big blood vessels run very close to the surface. So if you're able to cool those down, then it's going to help that blood cool down as it travels through the rest of your body. If you live in a two-story house, you want to make sure that you are staying on the lower level of the house as much as possible because heat does rise. And if you're spending a lot of time in the upper levels of your house, then, well, you're just going to be hotter than you need to. That's one reason why when you go into the attic during the summer, it is so hot. That's not the only reason, but it is a big one. And then also, I mean, especially during the hottest part of the day, like from 3 to 4 in the afternoon, there is no harm at all in jumping in the bathtub and soaking, taking a shower, dipping your feet in maybe a bucket of water, but you want to make sure that you don't use water that is too cold, because if your body starts to shiver, then your body temperature is just gonna rise. That's what happens when you're outside in the cold and your body starts shaking. It's heating itself up. And probably the most important thing to remember when you're trying to keep your body cool is you have to stay hydrated. If your body doesn't have adequate fluids, then it's not going to be able to keep itself cool. So drinking things like water is a good idea, but also electrolyte solutions such as Gatorade. This is the same tub of Gatorade that I showed in my video last year. It has been in my pantry or in a shelf on my utility room for almost a year now. The best buy date on it was February 3rd of this year, but I mixed some up this morning and it's perfectly fine. I had kept it sealed until now. I guess now that it's unsealed, I'll use it for mowing my lawn and stuff like that, so I don't have to go and buy individual bottles of Gatorade or Powerade, whatever the case may be, and I'll just go buy another one. But this and other similar drinks, they're going to do a good job replacing the other things that your body loses through perspiration. And you also want to make sure that the clothes that you're wearing are lightweight, loose-fitting, and lightly colored. If your clothes are lightweight, they're not going to have enough fabric to really heat you up. If they're loose-fitting, it allows air to circulate between your body and the clothes, which can help cool you down. And light colors, they do not absorb light or heat the way that dark ones do. They reflect them. So something like this would probably be okay. I mean, maybe a little bit lighter shirt. I have some lightly colored pants on. Those are what I use to mow. I like to have longer pants just because of mosquitoes and other kinds of bugs. But y'all, if it gets really hot in your house and you don't have a way to cool it down, like you don't have a generator or anything like that, there is no harm in going somewhere where the temperature is cooler. Because a lot of these kind of power outages, especially during the summer, you might not have power, but maybe a relative across town or the next town over does. there's no harm in loading up the kids and saying, we're going to go visit Granny and Grandpa. Or if there's like a bookstore in town that you like to, go pick out a book, and if it has a coffee shop in there, hang out there for a while. Or if it gets really hot in your house and you can't afford a hotel, but maybe you're somebody that camps, either go to a campground or even camp out in your backyard, because there are some times where if the temperature inside of the house has gotten really bad, it might actually be cooler outside. And tents, since they have a lot of mesh in them, they're going to allow air to flow through them, so it might actually be cooler in there. When it comes to keeping your home cool, one of the most important things to remember is do not cook inside. Maybe you're somebody that has gas appliances, so even if the power's out, your gas stovetop, your gas oven, they're still working fine. But you still don't want to use those, because very few things are going to heat up your home quicker than those types of appliances. So if you're wanting to cook, it might be a good time to go ahead and break out the charcoal grill, maybe your propane camp stove, and go ahead and cook outside. And cooking outside isn't really the worst idea, because if you know the power outage is going to last for a while, you can count on stuff in your refrigerator spoiling in as little as 4 hours. So it might be a good time to go ahead and have a cookout for you, your family, maybe invite some neighbors over, so at least that food doesn't go to waste. You can have sort of like a hurricane party. And for the same reason, you also want to avoid using things like candles, propane lanterns, and oil lamps, because each one of those, while they're generating light, they're also generating heat. LED lighting options are a far better way to go. You want to make sure that you have personal lighting like flashlights and headlamps, and area lighting like these LED lanterns. The good thing about these lanterns in particular is each one of them runs cool to the touch. You can have them on full blast and you can touch the little glass there, and it's not going to burn you like an oil lamp or a propane lantern would, which also means that it's not heating up your dwelling while it's producing light, so you're not fighting that losing battle. The only one that actually does run hot is the headlamp, just because it produces a ton of light in a very small package. And another good thing about LED lights is if you're able to use rechargeable batteries with them, you can keep them running pretty much indefinitely, even with a smaller solar power station like this EcoFlow River. Since they're LEDs, they run very efficiently, they don't use much power, so being able to recharge these batteries isn't going to be too much of a strain on even smaller solar power stations. Another area where having a solar power station is really going to help you out is with battery-operated fans. Fans are going to be a lot easier to keep running than a central air system or even a small window shaker unit. In last year's video, I showed how to turn this into a ceiling fan using just a little hook, a wall anchor, and some paracord. And then I showed how to mount this job site fan to your wall so it can be pointed at your bed while you're sleeping. The good thing about the power tool, like fans and lights and things like that, is since they use the same batteries, they're interchangeable and they're also easily replaceable. It's not like some equipment where they have an internal proprietary battery that if it goes bad, the entire unit's shot. And since this is part of a very popular tool lineup, Milwaukee's M18, it's going to be very easy to just go to the hardware store and buy a new battery if you need to. Now, they are expensive, but they are easy to find. But for these other fans like this one and this one, they use D-cell batteries, and you can find rechargeable D-cells and chargers to go with them. If you do that, I recommend getting the larger capacity ones. I think like the 10,000 milliamp hour batteries, that's what these are. Amazon doesn't sell these anymore, but they do sell some from other companies that do have that capacity. Another option is if you have devices that use AA batteries and you have rechargeables for those, companies like Eneloop, they make D-cell spacers where you can just insert one of their AA batteries inside of here, and that'll allow you to use that AA battery in devices such as these fans or the brown LED lantern that I showed a moment ago. One thing to remember is these aren't going to have the same capacity, so they're not going to run as long, but the voltage and everything like that will still be fine. And having battery operated fans is going to open some other options to you. Even something as simple as draping a wet towel over something and running a fan behind it, that's going to help cool down the air a little bit. And then if you want to make something like a swamp cooler or a one of those styrofoam air conditioners where you put ice in there, you cut 2 holes at the top, one for your fan, one for a little PVC elbow, those can help keep you cool. Now, I wanted to show those on this video, but I wasn't able to find the supplies to make them locally. Like, it blew my mind how difficult it was to find a styrofoam cooler with a flat top on it that I could mutilate a little bit to make that project. And also cooling pads for evaporative coolers. I couldn't find those either. So those might be the topics of another video down the road. But it also just goes to show you that if that's something that you think you might want to use in a really hot power outage, you want to go ahead and get those supplies now while they're available, if they are, because you might not just be able to go down to the store and pick them up when you need them. And another thing that you want to do during a summer power outage is utilize your windows. If you're somebody who lives in an older home that has the windows that open from the top and then from the bottom, that's great. You're going to be able to get yourself a lot of nice cross ventilation using those. But if you're somebody like me who lives in an area where there's a bunch of mosquitoes, you really want to make sure that you have screens on the windows that you are opening, just because you don't want to trade one form of misery for another. And another thing that you can do if you live in an area with bad mosquitoes, other insects, is you can put plants around your windows that those types of bugs don't really like that much. Like, I know mosquitoes, they don't like things like lavender, rosemary, or basil. So if you put those near your window, they're probably not going to grow big enough for a bad guy to hide behind while he's breaking into your house. And they also have some medicinal qualities, and some of them are edible as well. And one thing that a lot of people wonder about when it comes to summer power outages is window air conditioning units. I think I kind of mentioned this in the last video that I did, but I really feel that those are best utilized if you're in a situation where maybe you still have power, but for one reason or another, your main central air system went out, or if you have a larger gas or standby generator that maybe can't power the entire house's air system, but it can power the circuit that the window AC is plugged into, along with a couple other things. And there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, you want that window AC to be plugged into a wall outlet. Plugging it into an extension cord is pretty risky, and a lot of fires are caused by doing that, mainly by not using a thick enough cord. And also, if you're using something like even a larger solar power station, something like maybe an EcoFlow Delta, while yes, it will power it, it may only last for a few hours, because things like window air conditioners, anything that really cools something down or really heats something up, is going to drain a lot of power. So in most cases, I would recommend trying to use other ways to stay cool whenever possible. Then you can do other things to help keep your home itself cool. Do things like close windows and shades on the sunny side of the house. Do your best to seal up anywhere that cold air can escape your home. And the most common culprits of that are going to be leaky doors and leaky windows. If you can go ahead and seal those up now the right way, that's probably the best option. But if you're in a bind and you haven't been able to do that, get yourself some thick painter's tape, something like frog tape, and use that to close those gaps. And another area where a lot of heat enters your home could be through your fireplace. So you might want to look into maybe just temporarily covering that up so that warm air doesn't enter your home. And of course, you don't cover it up during winter because fire. But if there's no fire in it and it's the summer and you're not going to be using it anyway and warm air's coming in, go ahead and cover that bad boy up. And one big area that gets overlooked when talking about summer power outages is how to prevent as much food as you can from spoiling. Your food in your fridge, it can spoil in as little as 4 hours. Stuff in like a box freezer, it can last between 24 and 48 hours depending on how full your freezer is, your freezer itself, outside temperature, and then all that kind of stuff. So one good thing to do is if you know that the power outage is going to last for a while, and maybe you have something like a solar power station or a generator that can only power either your box freezer or your fridge, sacrifice as much stuff as you're willing to in the fridge and move what you can into the freezer, because that box freezer, especially a smaller one, it's going to require far less power to run, and it's going to run less than your refrigerator. And one option that maybe a lot of people don't know about is portable 12-volt refrigerator freezers. I recently received these two in the mail, and I'll be doing a full review of them later this month. The good thing about these portable refrigerator freezers is they require far less power than a refrigerator or even a box freezer. Usually they require somewhere between 45 and 65 watts when they're running just hardcore, trying to get it cooled down when you first turn it on. But if you have a lot of cold food in there, especially if it's frozen, it's not going to use hardly any power at all. You're even going to be able to use something like the EcoFlow Delta or Jackery 300 to keep it powered for a while. So if you want to learn more about grid collapse situations, y'all can click here. Y'all have a good one. Thanks again.